Totoro, Totoro.
Jump aboard! It's the good time fly high fantasy you've been looking for. It's a journey that will take you to heights you've always dreamed about. Hang on tight to my neighbor Totoro. They're furry. They're cuddly. They're Totoro.
Hey guys, so today's update is going to be different from normal. Something very unusual happened to me last night, and honestly, I just have to tell someone. Bear with me for this. So as many of you know, I'm a big fan of Studio Ghibli movies. I've loved them ever since I was a kid. I always used to sack out on the couch, maybe with a parent, and watch those films for hours on end. Always clutching the most Japanese stack our rural superstores had in stock. In fact, I've had this one VHS copy of My Neighbor Totoro ever since I was about 10 years old. I think I got it for my birthday or something, since it must have been pretty expensive for my parents to order it. It's in Japanese, but it has English subtitles. In general, it's always been very good quality, and I've never had any problems getting it to play. That is until last night. That's where my odd experience begins. So last night I was out with my girlfriend at some little diner place. Neither of us were very hungry, so we only got fries and shakes to go, and then went out with them to the park. It was one of those nights where the sky seemed larger than normal and the cold edge on the air felt pleasant. The park was all lit up even though it was still early in the evening, and we spent some time walking and reflecting on the nature of life among other things. Later on, she got a text from her mom saying that her aunt was in the hospital, and she had to leave to visit her. Still feeling reflective and a little philosophical, I went home and popped in the VHS tape. I still kept around a tiny little TV set just to watch it, along with a couple old VHS tapes that have been collecting dust along the years. Initially, it wouldn't play, but after a little bit of dusting and cleaning, I eventually got it to start up. The film started as it always did, with some advertisements in Japanese and then the movie itself. Everything seemed to be working fine for a good while, except I could tell something was off with the screen. Something was wrong with the frame rate, as in it would go a little slower than normal, and then every so often it would sometimes overcompensate by speeding up too much. The colors also seemed off, but nothing too bad that would interfere with the watching of the movie. It was, for the most part, fine. A short ways in, however, about when May goes missing in the forest, the screen started darkening. It got darker in significant amounts at a time, but it took a short while to become noticeable. By the time I started noticing it, the TV was making a very weird mechanical whirring. Afraid that it might catch fire, I tried to remove the VHS, but to my avail, the VHS wouldn't come out, no matter how hard I tried to wrench it out. The noise subsided and the screen was almost entirely black. Then it cut to a very strange video clip I've never seen in my many years of watching this movie. It was someone walking through a seemingly old building, probably from the early 20th century. It generally looked dilapidated, and it had a tile floor with carved wooden doors, from what I could make out. The video was very shaky, and you could see someone in dress pants and shoes walking in a sort of panic, occasionally taking turns. The video stopped right about when the person filming turned into a dark corridor, and then looped back around. The video was dead silent, but I could have sworn after watching it a couple dozen times that I could hear breathing. I couldn't... But... I couldn't tell whether this breathing was coming from my house or the TV, so I got up and looked around the room. But it didn't get louder when I came near anything, so I assumed it was the TV. And I noticed that the video clips were changing as the movie progressed. Posters start appearing in the hallways, and later crumpled or trodden on the floor. I couldn't make out what they were at first, but I could just barely see that they were Ghibli movie promotional posters. Most of them were My Neighbor Totoro, but some of them had Nausicaa, Kiki's, and some other ones that I couldn't determine. Possibly concept art for movies that they never released. However, soon these concept art posters were the majority of what I saw. And the amount of posters continued to grow until they were literally covering all the walls and the floor. For the final and absolutely unforgettable clip, the cameraman was breathing hard and having difficulty trudging through the massive amount of posters littered all over the place. Eventually, he made his turn. But instead of the video looping as it did before, the cameraman continued down the corridor, which was very dark, but after a while you could start making out that he was descending a staircase. This very unnatural feeling started creeping through me, sort of like a paralysis. I don't know if it was morbid curiosity or if something took hold of me then, but I felt unable to divert my attention, no matter how fundamentally wrong the video started to feel. Soon he'd reached the end of the staircase, breathing softer now, and opened a sickeningly pale door into sort of a chamber. I'd really rather not go into detail about this part, but it will haunt me if I don't, so I will try to give you all the best image I possibly can. It was a big circular room, all made of tile, with metal tables strewn in what seemed like a random pattern, but caused a sort of nausea in me that I can't fully describe or even understand. There was dark fluid along the edges of everything. I don't think it was blood, but I honestly don't know what else it would have been. Some tables had little metal apparatuses on them, none that I could make out what purpose they served. Thin pieces of metal fashioned into various tools that seemed almost alien, maybe. Then cameraman. The cameraman enters an open doorway at the end of the hall and... Oh God. There was something strapped to the table. And as soon as I saw it, it seemed like the fabric of reality itself started breathing. It was a big circular room, all made of tile, with metal tables strewn in what seemed like a random pattern, but caused a sort of nausea in me that I can't fully describe or even understand. There was dark fluid along the edges of everything. I don't think it was blood, but I honestly don't know what else it would have been. Some tables had little metal apparatuses on them, none that I could make out what purpose they served. Thin pieces of metal fashioned into various tools that seemed almost alien, maybe. Then cameraman. The cameraman enters an open doorway at the end of the hall and... Oh God. There was something strapped to the table. And as soon as I saw it, it seemed like the fabric of reality itself started breathing. The video cut out right then. And for a second, flashed blood red. I was aware of presences around me, but I still couldn't look up or away. My body was fixed to where it was. Totoro started playing again. This time in a language I don't even know how I was able to hear. But I heard it. A disgustingly unnatural version of May. Human-like with drawn details in all the wrong places. Realistic looking and just... It was like she was actually a person. I can hardly describe what it was supposed to look like, but it had the texture of a person in reality, but it's in that cartoon form. It was so awful. It started walking through a muted forest, and I swear to you that I could hear the leaves rustling and insects droning, all in the most depressed and apathetic way imaginable. A dark and blurry shape became noticeable in the distance. I began feeling the dreamlike sensation of being May, seeing what she saw, just the shape reeking of death in all the senses grew larger and larger in my vision. I couldn't look directly at it. It felt like a blind spot, but I knew it was somehow more. It started taking form. It seemed like a shape in the corner of my eye, except I was facing it, forced to watch all of its putrid ugliness become crystal clear. It was Totoro. The death stink grew stronger and stronger. The breathing in the room grew sharper and louder. My heartbeat raged. My muscles strained to contain their force. And I approached Totoro, who started to turn, and I looked to where he turned. Oh my god. I see this skinny and impossibly tall creature which loomed across my entire field of vision. Iridescently and translucently pale. Its bent and bird-like arms flayed their hands outward, its ribcage looping in a nauseous circle, its muscles and sinews shuddered, its fingers curled and uncurled, and my eyes followed upward, past its impossibly thin ribcage and its gasping neck into a face. A face I was never supposed to see. So wrong and so unnatural and so malformed that its existence felt like an attack on my own. Its shuddering and gasping mouth forced into a smile, and its eyes ground in their sockets until they met my own. Let out a cry which was a moan of entropy and emptiness and death and primal, undiluted terror. But I woke up as if it was a nightmare. When I awoke, I found myself in a hospital, strapped tightly to an uncomfortable cot and soaked in sweat. Every inch of me felt sore. Later, a nurse, my girlfriend, and my mother explained to me that the police had been called and I was found in my apartment, seizing on the carpet, bleeding from my ears and nose, and screaming. When they mentioned my screams, they all grew quiet. I could tell they were still disturbed deeply by the memory. I refused to believe that I imagined any of it. I did not dream it. I did not conjure it. But sometimes I believe that it would have been better if I did. Because what I saw last night wasn't meant to be witnessed by humans or by anyone. They're keeping me in the hospital to be examined for now, but I honestly doubt they'll find any medical explanation for what happened to me. I still feel cold now. I hope it goes away.